Hi, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today for this talk, Black History Month Norway, Stories from the National Museum. This stream is from the National Museum here in Oslo, and we will open for questions the last half an hour. We are honored today to have 4 guests with us, and today's moderator will be Michelle Tistel. Thank you.
Why? Thank you, Nadine. Thanks for having us. And thank you to the National Museum for having us. We have with us today Stine, Victor, and Ida, and I will ask them to present themselves. My name is Michelle A. Tistel. I'm a social anthropologist, and I'm very pleased to be with you this evening. So, Stine, please present yourself.
My name is Stine Høgqvist. I'm head of collection here at the National Museum.
Victor.
My name is Victor Kimati. I'm 21 years of age. Currently a student of the arts over at NBX. And yes, that's about it.
Yeah, Ida.
My name is Ida Evita de Leon. I am 32. I am the initial, I started Black History Month Norway, and I work as an activist on a daily basis, actually.
Very interesting. Oh, really? Well, good for you. That's lovely. Yeah. So on to our discussion. I would like to start off by asking you all pretty much the same question, but I have prepared individual questions for you, and I have a couple of questions that I think would be great to hear all of your perspectives on. My first question for you all this evening is, tell us why you agreed to participate in this event organized by the National Museum, and I would like to start with Ida.
I agreed because we had a very interesting conversation 3 weeks ago with the National Library, museum, and they had an open dialogue about their institution and how historically they have been not very inclusive. So it was a nice open conversation about how the history of not including minorities has still effect on today's world and how we could collaborate to highlight that. That's why I agreed to meet, and because I find it very interesting to be able to have these conversations openly. That's new to me, even though I've been working in the field of minority majority perspectives for a while. So I really like the new openness that seems to occur.
What about you, Victor?
Well, for me, this is the first of many, hopefully. And I like the idea of, like she said, like my sister said over here, it's good to get in such topics. And, for me, this is a starting point. And I feel like, it's the right way to go. Because I haven't seen this happen in Norway, at least for many years. Now that they're willing to do it, have us over, appreciate it. And yeah, it's a first step.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sorry.
Yes, Stina.
I think it's very important for any museum, also ours, to be part of a larger public discussion, dialogue. We have to be open, we have to be curious, willing to learn more, and willing to be self-reflective. And I think it's important to also state that history is not something that's constant. It's always changing and has to be changing.
Right.
And we have to be part of that change as well.
Ida.
I also...
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry. When it comes to the collaboration with the National Library, and no, I'm always saying library, museum.
We have a library too.
Right? Museum and Black History Month. I'm hoping that this collaboration can also help Black History Month collect the fragments of Black art or Black history in the National Museum, so we could highlight that and keep that and lift that constantly, because you address a lot of topics and not just Black or LGBTQ plus or minorities or majorities. So hopefully we could have a collaboration where we could help each other highlight Black history, Norway.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So this conversation is happening precisely as part of a larger marking or acknowledgement of your organization's celebration of Black History Month. So, how is it going, Ida? How has Black History Month gone? How have your events been going? Are you pleased? Tell us what's been happening.
It's been massive. It was also massive last year when it comes to our own community. But this year, because of Black Lives Matter and because of the international situation, more people understand what we're talking about, and they understand why it's important to highlight Black history. So it's just it's more open dialogue, and it's become a big, big thing. So we're experiencing a lot of growing pains, but to be able to grow, you need to have growing pains. So we're embracing that, and we're very happy about being acknowledged, and that Norwegian Black history is being acknowledged as a part of Norwegian history, which is very important for us.
Right. I think you've had something like 14 arrangements and events this month, and I know that the closing is on Saturday at Dijkman Public Library.
Yes.
So, there's still time to observe, participate, join in the celebration.
Yeah, we have online content every day on Instagram, and we've also made a series which is called Black Representation in Norway with 4 different topics that you could see on YouTube as well.
Have you been able to catch any of the other activities that's been a part of the Black History Month offering, Victor?
Sadly, no. I've been quite busy.
Yeah, no, I understand. I was also at the opening, and I have checked out some of the content online. I checked out the great series. That was really fascinating. I thought that was it was so impressive to see, or so exciting to see all the young people. I say young people. I'm a young person, but I mean other young people, contributing and talking so freely and openly and with so much wisdom. About their own relationship to history and what they hope to get out of an event like this. I wanted to ask you, Stine, more about the institution, since the institution is taking the initiative on the basis of that conversation. Can you tell us a little bit? Could you describe this institution and its priorities with respect to issues of diversity and representation? How have you guys been addressing these issues? What's going on here at the museum?
I mean, we have a goal and a vision to be inclusive and to be open, and we want to be the museum for all of Norway. That's also in our mandate with the National Museum. So we have to be for everyone. And when we open a new museum, because we're building a new one and waiting for it to be ready. And of course, we also want other people, like not our normal visitor groups only to visit the museum. We want a lot of other groups to come, because art is important. And I think it's very important that our visitors, also when they come to the museum, should feel included, and they should have something to identify with. So we have to work with that to tell different stories, because, like I said earlier, there's not only one history. There's so many different stories, so many different fragments that we need to patch together. That hasn't maybe been patched together before. And also when it comes to the museum, we have to work in a way that we can manage. We don't want to work short-sighted. We need to work in a way that has effect, in the long-term perspective.
Yeah.
And of course, it also comes to how to recruitment, to education, awareness of the different topics. Also, for all the staff working in the museum, and of course, there are different views. We have to have. Also be open that there are different opinions, So we have to, we started and we want to learn more and test out different forms of engagement and planning, involvement because it's very complex, it's very difficult, and of course there's also this nervousness of doing something wrong, using the wrong terms, not being good, not being like. But we have to be, I think, brave and open and dare to maybe make mistakes and learn from it. Yeah.
What do you guys think when you hear that reflection that the institution is looking for opportunities to learn? And I agree that bravery is part of learning. You know, when I came to Norway and was going to learn Norwegian, the hardest part was just getting over the discomfort of speaking in front of other people and being afraid to make mistakes. And, you know, I say that to everyone I know who also is attempting to learn foreign language, and particularly Norwegians, not to be afraid. But that kind of communication and effort also requires a willingness and a generosity on the part of the person you're speaking to lean forward to hear what you're saying. You know, that communication is a partnership that the person speaking and the person listening have to have a goodwill. So how does it sound when you hear that reflection that the museum is seeking opportunities to learn and welcoming a dialogue like this? What do you think about those kinds of reflections?
Well, for me, for example, I think the first solution to solving a problem is acknowledging that there is a problem in the first place. And I think the National Museum is doing a very good job with that.
Thank you.
Hence why we're here, you know. And yeah, questions have to be asked so we can find the answers. Otherwise, we can never, you know, get to the answers. Divide is always going to be between every human being. We just got to know how to, you know, balance it out. Yes.
Yeah, and I think also when it comes to museums, if you look to the history museums, like the modern museums that we know, they came after the French Revolution, you know, and it's the French Revolution revolutionized the world. And in many ways, and the Louvre, that was like the royal castle. After revolution, they turned it into like the museum for the people, so the people could see like all the art and all the other, like, you know, fancy stuff that the royal family could have. So this was the start, and I think that this public responsibility, there's something constant in the museum.
That is very interesting because that's, of course, European museum history. That's not world museum history.
Yeah.
That's just European museum history. But that is true, that European museum history does, in Europe, a lot of the museums, in particular national museums, have that same trajectory.
Yeah.
They started off as private collections, and then those collections became nationalized and became a part of nation building. And that is maybe where some of the challenge lies, because so much of the national museum histories are tied to nation building, and the nations, European nations, were competing against each other, and so you have a similar use of national museums as kind of flagship symbols, signaling the nations.
Yeah, but also I think also that like the attitude of the museums also changed, because also like these first European museums. I mean, if you look at the last 30 years, European and American museums have changed a lot when it comes to how they address the public. Because there's a will to change or to turn this more authoritative voice, that we have the answers. We're going to tell you how it is. We're going to tell you history that you come here and learn. I think that is changing, and I think it's good that it's changing. Because this is also like that we need to go out and, like, you know, listen more and get in other voices. You know, I think that's a big,
more participatory style.
That's a big turn, I think.
Ida, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I agree upon what everyone said, and that's also, and to add on that, I believe that we need to also note or save these conversations and learn from them, because I see, when I've researched in history, I see that we have had a lot of these conversations without results. So it's important that we actually somehow write down these conversations, learn from them, and move forward, because the lack of history written down in Norwegian multicultural history or Black history is that we tend to do the same things over and over again because we believe that this is the first time these things have been addressed. So we also believe that we also believe that we are the first ones to ever have had this conversation, or the first Black person, or the first mixed race person that's ever accomplished something. So it's important to write down these conversations, make not a pact, I'm lacking the word I'm looking for in English, but a plan, or it can't only be a conversation.
Right.
We need
a strategy.
we need to have a strategy,
action plan.
action plan as well. Because what I've seen is that these conversations has been taking time more or less for 400 years, kind of. And we need to move forward as well. And I believe history is some of the answer to that.
I just want to mention, were you about to say something, Victor? Okay, I wanted to mention that speaking about that this isn't the first kind of conversation about, of this kind. I mean, I saw, I suppose it was a month or so ago that you had Thomas Preste and Asta Lidersen here having a similar conversation, slightly different subject, but a relevant conversation that's related to this one. And I also want to mention the dissertation of Åshild Andrea Brekke. She has done research, doctoral dissertation about museums and diversity initiatives in Norway, Norwegian museums and diversity issues. And I don't want to misrepresent her findings because I haven't read the whole dissertation. However, that was one of her points, is that these conversations have existed in Norway for quite some time, and particularly in the museum sector. There's been a lot of initiatives. There's, a lot of multicultural museum type initiatives and programs, and it is a very vibrant field with a lot of activity. So there's a lot of information circulating, and there's a lot of examples circulating, which is why it's very interesting that we're doing it. We're continuing that, but having it in relation to an organization's initiative to mark Black history is, in my opinion, a move, taking it a step further. It's a development in the conversation, because it's an initiative that comes from a community that an institution or institutions acknowledge, and then add to the community's self reflection, so to speak. So this is a slightly different, and I would like to think a step. It's not just a repetition, but this is a new step, that this is happening as part of of the Black History Month initiative.
Yeah, because I agree, and I know there's and I think knowing this history, this contemporary history, I think it's also of course, it's natural to feel skeptic. Is it only something you do, just for is it only skin deep, or
Yes.
But I think also you have to, even though we had maybe these conversations before, I think also the momentum is different now, and that can maybe make the difference. Because when you look back at, I think it was 2008 that we in Norway had Mangfoldsåret.
Yeah. Yes.
And I think so much has changed in those 12 years, because also social media has changed, and all the pressure and the fastness and the speed of social media and the need for craving for transparency, it's created a new kind of awareness, community feeling, I think. And also when it comes to, maybe I'm wrong and I'm just talking from my subjective memory, but in 2008 you did Mangfoldsåret and it felt quite isolated. You did your stuff. There was exhibitions and talks, but there was nothing. I cannot remember, maybe NRK will hate me now because maybe they did a lot. But there was I didn't see any traces. I don't remember having any shows or talks or stuff on TV. But now when you look at NRK, but this is also of course the change of streaming and the different possibilities. You have different. you can work in a faster way, I guess, with programming, because now with Black History Month, all these debates with Black Lives Matter. I mean, if you go into NRK, you have like all these documentaries about slavery, the slave ship,
the Klan, the Ku Klux Klan. There was that one was
the
on.
documentary about O.J. Simpson.
Yep.
You have all this, so you can just, so this. I think this situation for the conversation is so different. I think also this is very important. It maybe have a bigger impact.
Ida.
I agree, and we have slightly tried to create a model where we also take that we need to be responsible for this ourselves. So by having an annual Black History Month, we could look back and transcript this conversation and be like, well, what's next? We had this conversation last year, so we also need to take responsibility for actually writing our own Black Norwegian history, because nobody can do it like we can do it for ourselves. So it's also, we're in position, thankfully, because of our elders that's been working really hard for us to be able to live our lives the way we do in Norway. So we need to also take responsibility to follow up and to have a collaboration and dialogue. I appreciate the dialogue and being invited into these structures.
I have a question for Victor, but before we get to that question, I want to address, I want to stay on this topic for just a second longer, because I was looking through the event, the post for this event on Facebook, and I was reading through the comments, which you're not supposed to do, of course, and I read through the comments. I only did it once, but I read through the comments. But I want to take up a sentiment that I read in the comments, because I think it was really interesting. Because while we seem to agree on the relevance of having a conversation like this, and also having collaborations and inviting organizations into institutions and having that intimacy, that contact, not everyone understands why a national museum or a national library or the public library should interest themselves in a topic such as Black history. And particularly right now, there is this idea that engaging this subject or engaging in a dialogue or meeting a group like Black History Month Norway on their premises in their desire to reflect on this subject is somehow kneeling to Black identity politics. And I think that if we don't address this, I wouldn't call it a concern, but if we don't address sentiments like this and try to give people a reasonable explanation to help them have the possibility of understanding this from another point of view, then we do ourselves a disservice. So at least a couple of times trying to explain to someone that this is not necessarily, I don't want to answer for you, but I mean, how can we talk? Someone might say, well, is there really a need to respond to a sentiment like that? But I'd like to give it a try. How can you explain to someone who doesn't really understand or who doesn't buy in or who is skeptical to why a national institution should engage with an organization and a subject like this on the premises? How would you? Does anyone want to try to explain? Why this is, or how would you address that? How can we address this? This is a common responsibility we have to try to talk to.
Yeah, and I think it's like a common comment when it comes to change in general, or like wanting change. I mean, it's like when you look at feminism. If you look at now this debate with now we're only buying female artists. Yes, what about the poor men? It's the same.
I saw that.
So and I think I think maybe it's for some people it's an instinct, because they feel maybe like excluded and pushed out, they're going to lose something. But I hope that they're watching this streaming. Maybe that will change their mind. I don't know. But then again, you can't win them all.
No, you can't win them all. But is there a way to? I think, yeah. Anyone else? You don't have to have a response, but I'm just wondering if there are any.
Well, for me, I think people are going to say what they want to say. There's always going to be a divide. Change, like you said, change is not always welcomed. You know, it is what it is.
It is what it is.
For me personally, I am mixed race, and I also grew up in a very diverse area where there wasn't many people, white people living. So I'm growing up in a part of Norway which isn't typically white, but it's still Norwegian. So being what is the definition of being Norwegian or Norwegian history? It's not a separate, Black history is not a separate history in Norwegian history. Exactly. We've always been international. The Vikings traveled abroad. We've always traveled.
Did they?
And
yeah, that's an understatement.
Right? So
they traveled abroad.
They traveled. So it's not a new thing, and I think that that's the whole incentive for Black History Month, is that we just need to highlight what has always been, because it's always been. It's just that people really don't know. It's a matter of knowledge. So that's our incentive. We want to. My dream is in 10 years that the history books and for my children will be different. They will include our stories, which is Norwegian stories, and mixed and international stories.
Yeah, and I think it's also like I've been thinking also like also how vulnerable.
Vulnerable, yes.
Yes. Vulnerable. Things are when it comes to, this is not the same topic when you think about what's happening in Poland at the moment. Only one generation ago, like they won this fight about abortion, and it's so easy, just like now it's a new law and change, so it's also something to really take care of.
It's not a linear. Progress is not linear.
No,
I think,
and I think that's
saying,
also
right?
very important. And also when you look at like the history of like the history in the U.S., like from slavery up until like the civil rights movement. I mean, it's it's not linear.
It's not linear, and I think maybe we forget that. We think it's easy to focus on the period we live in and how linear, how fast the progress is, how much progress is made in this. You know, if we think of history as like an arrow that's moving, and then we intersect with it here, but the arrow goes through. You know, it's going to go through generations, and it comes from through generations already, and we're intersecting with it kind of in this moment. And I try to remind myself that the progress is really outside of the scope of what I can see. You know, I'm only seeing a very limited view of the progress, but the real progress is, you know, if I were to ask my grandmother, what, you know, about the current situation, she just shrugged her shoulders. She's like, you know, it'll be okay. This is nothing compared to, and then I hear, you know, compared to another period when there was even more unrest than the unrest that we're seeing now. It's not right. So I think that you're right about the history not being
you can't take
linear.
it for granted.
No, and that speaks to what you say about how you hope the history books will look when your son and you know is older. I would like to move on to my question for you, Victor.
Yes.
And it is, I heard that you visited the National Museum and had a unique experience here, and I was wondering if you could tell us about it. Tell us.
So we was invited as NBX, Nordic Black Theater.
Yes.
As the whole school, the new school that's there.
Yeah.
And we had this showing. It was nice, but now I'm gonna be honest. I'm speaking on behalf of the class. First of all, they did not like the fact that they were being filmed without their notice.
Oh, that's I apologize for that. Yeah.
Yeah, they felt like they were being kept on show. You know, because it's Black history thingy and it's, you know.
Okay,
So they were feeling like, okay, the National Museum wanna show, hey, we have outside people too. We include people. That's how they felt. Second thing, we did not feel that much represented with the arts that were there. Because, for example, for me personally, the way melanin was presented did not really touch me. You know, it didn't speak to me like that. But apart from that, the experience was, you know, something new. Yes,
Okay. So if I understand correctly, your class from Nordic Black was invited to the museum.
Yes.
And did you have like a private omvisning? What it go? Did you have a did you have a guided tour, or were you what did you do when you came?
Okay, so let me see. Okay, we came in. The place was set up. We went around to check. It was in the, you know, it was limited. It wasn't everything that was there.
Sure.
It was some limited equipments or arts. So we looked at them. We took a good look at them. And then afterward, there was what's his name? The guests. They had some guests.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thomas was there from
Yeah.
Tibanka.
Oh, okay, okay.
Big
So
up
this
to
was
him.
part of that. That was that doing that. Okay.
Yes. So
yeah.
it's the same day.
Okay.
Yes. And then we had the talk, and then some questions. Yeah, and that was about it. But I think we had just come from the Astrup Museum, and we, the people of color, I like to call myself African, not black. I'm not a color. Yeah. But
right.
yeah, we felt that we were represented, we were seen, you know, in the Astrup Museum. But then when we came to the National Museum, it was a little bit different because, you know, the way we were projected wasn't what you want to see on a daily basis. I would say so.
Yeah, can I just want maybe to explain some context, because if I understand you right, also the exhibition as a family was also contemporary African art. So and the exhibition at the Museum of Architecture was called A Collection in the Making, and we showed some examples of what we had acquired like the last year. So it was like examples from
new
this.
acquisitions.
Yeah, it was new acquisitions. So, and also the whole exhibition was, the idea was to show how, like the broad spectre of what we collect, and that we have this diverse field when it comes to history, geography, time, and so we had also when it comes to diversity, we also have a focus on the Sami and the Sami history, and then we had a few works that we purchased last year. That would be Fridor Pabo, that of course has this critical work. Or she works. She has this critical eye on how the black body has been presented. No, and then what else did you have?
Is this the piece
it's
that you
just-
had?
it's
Was this
just
the?
that one.
Is this the
There
piece?
it is,
I decided
yeah.
to put. I could actually multitask
Yeah.
and get it up while you were speaking. Okay.
And she makes these collages from images that she finds, like, you know, going through internet, that she puts together. And you can see that they're like some small, like, looks almost like screws. So it feels like this mannequin that you can move around.
Like a paper doll.
Like a
almost,
paper
actually.
doll, and you have like this mannequin, and someone is your master in this. This is how I see it. So it's like it's not a very nice piece, but I think it's a very strong and important piece.
For us, you know, for
Yeah.
the first impression,
Yeah.
that was not a good first impression for
No.
us, you know,
Yeah.
as in NBX, you know,
Yeah.
because we was expecting something different. We did not know what to expect until
Yeah.
we was there.
And what would you like? Like, what did you like in the Astrup Further, like when it comes to the works or in the exhibition?
Oh, there was okay. In the Astrup one, for example, there was multiple things. There was, you know, not only one thing.
Yeah.
There was, you know, colors, different things, African things. You know, Africa is wide. It's not just one history.
No. Yeah.
So after that, I think we were surprised to come into this because we was kind of felt home. Then, you know, yeah.
Well, that's an interesting point, and we were talking. I was thinking about that, and I was thinking, because art, how we experience art is very subjective, and art is made to be experienced, but not all art is made necessarily to be enjoyed or to be liked. And I suppose it's so individual how you appreciate. Or how one appreciates art, appreciation is not necessarily liking, sometimes you appreciate but you don't like something, or sometimes we connect with something, or there's so many different ways to experience it. So I was very curious as to what you experienced when you came. Like, what experience did you have with the art that you saw? And you described the experience you had with the art that you encountered at Astrupanle. And I'm just wondering about your personal taste. Like what you mentioned, you are drawn to color, and you like things that kind of reflect, where you can see some of your vision of the African some of the work. So this may be a genre and a kind of art that is different from what you usually, or I don't know. I want to hear more about you. I want to hear more about how you experience different.
Okay, thank you. I see what you're saying, but I feel like such history has been already nailed into our heads too many times. There's so much history that hasn't been said. It's about time that history is told.
I agree.
This type of, we know it's in the history books. It's in the roots. It's everywhere. We got the point. But Africa is way much more than that. There's the Moors, there's the kings we had, there's the civilizations, there's the Colombo,
So it's about relevance for you, and it's a bit about relevance.
I feel like it's about time, okay, for example, I'm just going to give you a quick example.
Okay.
King Leopold, you have heard of him.
Yeah.
To us, Africans, he's almost a Hitler. Worse than Hitler, actually.
Yeah.
Sure. That's understandable.
But the Europeans look at the good sides. You understand?
Yes, it's very
So
interesting.
I want African arts to be, there's always a good and a bad side. Let's look at the good sides. Let's appreciate what Africa has done.
Yeah, I mean, I can see your point, and also want just now it's maybe a bit abstract to talk about these exhibitions because we don't have any images, but also this exhibition at the museum was not contextualized. It was all like it's random, because when it's not random, but when you have new acquisitions, it's like it's more example of future contextualizations, future research. But I think also if we did it I was a curator earlier. I was working also with contemporary African art. And then I would have I can totally see what you're saying, because I think it's so important to also dare to show other aesthetics than we're used to, maybe. Because I think that's very important. Maybe I think it's important to show that that modernism, it was also in Africa at the same time. It was also in Asia at the same time. It was like parallel histories. Maybe they looked at it a bit different, like when it comes to aesthetics or shapes and forms. But it was still modernism. It was still conceptual art, and it existed So sometimes you can get fooled by the idea that there's this one idea of quality, and that we have the definition for it. And I think it's so important also what you're saying, that I think also when it comes to what we buy or what we show in exhibitions, it should also have this variety, because it should also be something that you can feel at home with also when you look at it,
Thank you. There's something we wrote after we visited the museum, like our thoughts and if I can remember, mine was like, okay, nowadays I like to, whenever I'm in a place, I like to make sure that my inner child feels welcomed and secure. Seeing this does not make my inner child feel any good.
Yeah.
And because of that, I cannot take my brothers, for example. I have little brothers who are interested in art.
Okay.
This is not what I want to show them.
I see what you're
You
saying.
know what I'm saying?
I do see what you're saying.
So
Yeah,
we
yeah.
are in charge of the narrative of how the kids in the future are going to be, So we have to see what we're feeding them, so we can,
Very interesting. So that's your individual reflection about it's not even fascinating, but I see what you're saying. You have a perspective on what you want to feed yourself
inner
with,
child,
and
yes.
what kind of impressions you want to share with your siblings, and you are looking for things that are that validate your values and validate the aesthetics that you that feed you, so to speak. So I understand that. And that's how it should be. But I think that is also part of engaging with art. You go. I don't know how many things I've been to where the takeaway message for me was, that was interesting. That's not for me, but that was interesting, and I'm glad I went.
Yeah.
I went because when I go thinking that it's one thing to go and that you know what you're going to encounter, and you're going because you're already familiar with something. But we have the experiences where we seek out new experiences and new opportunities just to find out, how we respond to something different. So I wanted to hear about that experience. What did you guys do with the reflections that you wrote? Were they a part of your assignment at Nordic
No, it
Black
was
to
just a
write them, or is it just
reflection.
something that you wrote for yourself? Or
Okay, because the whole class was
I
disappointed.
think they really.
Bring it on.
It sounds. I have heard that there was quite a reaction amongst the class.
There was.
So you guys were so inspired that you wrote. Most of you wrote something.
Everybody had a piece to say,
Wow. Okay.
and yeah, we majorly agreed on. It wasn't that welcoming to us, at least, and but just given the fact that y'all invited us there, appreciate it, big up to y'all, but can always be changed. But yes, everybody wrote different sections, but it's almost connected in a way, we can say.
And what did you do with what you wrote? Is it just an internal document that you guys have?
No,
Or what did you do with it?
hopefully, okay, the class would like to be here, but Corona stuff.
That's right. Of course, no audience today. Yeah.
Yeah, so they have them written down. We have notebooks. We are artists. We have
That's right.
notebooks. We
That's
note
not- yeah.
things down. If y'all wanna hear, you can
course,
always
I'd love
invite
to
us.
hear
You can always invite us, National Museum.
Yeah.
Yep.
For-
and
yeah.
we'll be.
You're welcome. And I
Thank
think
you.
it's super interesting to hear. And I think this is why these kind of conversations and interactions are so important. And also think when you say that art is subjective, I agree in a sense, but I also disagree. But because taste and consensus is something that's so taught.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's also
It's passed on. It's
totally
transmitted.
passed
Yeah.
on. And when it comes to
It's not neutral. Subjective,
no,
but it's not
at
neutral.
all. And I remember I was recently in Helsinki, or recently, I don't know, it was pre-COVID. I don't know when that was. It's like ages ago, but when I was,
Time. What's recent?
and then they have this iconic work, and it's by the brothers from Vricht, from can't remember the year, something 1900 something. Oh, I mean 19th century. And it's two birds, two orrfugler. I don't know what that is in English. These black birds with these feathers, and they're standing in the snow. And it's an iconic work. And I'm looking at it, and I'm sorry, Finland, but it's what's iconic about this? But then I read the text, and it was actually questioning this. And it was, of course, this is iconic because this image has been in the school books for so many decades. So it's taught, and now they're looking to find icons or like iconic works that actually like new visitors, that can maybe that the public can relate to in a different way, and I think that's interesting.
Very interesting. So you made a point. Ida would like to add
Yeah.
something, but you made a point about it's true that having many different kinds of aesthetic values represented, so we can see your idea of the iconic, your idea of the iconic, my idea of the iconic. That is perhaps something to aspire to. Ida, you wanted to add?
I think I maybe see a parallel to the world of activism that I'm working within. I often have institutions come to me and ask if I could help them with discrimination or installations or something artsy, or when it comes to experiencing racism. And the focus is always on us telling our trauma, like always trauma porn. For me, this is kind of, I saw her speaking of her own works, and I really understand where her thoughts come from, and I agree, and it's an interesting piece that makes me think, but I'm kind of tired of the same narrative about our history is only racism, slavery, Martin Luther King, and colonization. And this year we are actually talking about this in Black History Month, but we want to go beyond that. We just want to state that we have been here for 400 years because of slavery, and also with the Vikings. I haven't found anything about that as yet, but probably. But we are so much more than trauma.
Yeah.
And I believe that every time these institutions come to me, I ask them the question, why don't you ask white people or other people on how they have been racist or had said something racist, just to turn the view, or just to turn the nickel and just ask. African history is always the same trauma, and it's so much more. Like you said, with my child as well, I want him to learn about the kings and the queens and the inventors, because I believe that if the only thing you know about Africa is slavery, colonization, and racism, we all become biased and kind of stereotypical and racist in a sense. Most people don't know what Africa has contributed when it comes to main society. Like in our series, they talk about the Norwegian history book being this thick, and then you talk about imperialism and all of these great ages in Europe, and then you have 2, maybe 10 or 20 pages about Africa, and it's only about colonization. So to me, it's also that it represents that same narrative that's always been, and hopefully will not always be. It's an important piece of our history, but and her critique is also important.
Right.
But you need a wider spectrum.
Sure, but that's one of many. That's one of many historical representations or themes, I guess, is what we're talking about. There are many other themes that are equally valid and that people perhaps are even more interested in or equally interested in. So, yes, please.
I want to say one thing additional. When I was in school, I just finished school, by the way, high school.
Yes. Okay.
When I was
So young.
And so wise.
Yeah.
Look at that. Yeah, so you were saying? Yes.
Yes, also.
Also.
Yes, 1 second. Yes, calibrating. Yeah, so when I was in school, I remember in the history book, there's this part where they touch a little bit about the Moors, just a little bit, and then they leave. There's nothing more told about the Moors, the kingdoms of Africa. And the thing is, this same biasness is even in Africa.
Exactly.
Because we're not taught, for example, in Africa nowadays, we're not taught about the history.
The pre-colonial history, the ancient history. Yeah.
About the Punt kingdoms, the Kush, the Nubian, we're not taught about that. But after colonization, that's when, Kenya, Uganda.
Well, the national state, the nation state, I suppose it's focusing on, that's very interesting. You felt that as well, that there was something, did you feel that you...
There's something left out because, our history can't just begin in colonization.
Of course
Come on,
not. Sure.
There's no way that can happen.
No.
But we've gotten the point, like I said before, and I feel like it's about time we move on from this. It causes more trauma than letting go of the trauma. Because the generation now, for the young people, we've talked about this stuff, like without biasness, like really. You sit with a person from a different place and you get to talk to them. You're like, okay, let me hear you, you know? Let me hear your side of the story. And you find out once this happens, we're just souls, we're just human beings at the end of the day who have been born in different places, we in different bodies. I did not choose to be a male. I did not choose to be African. No. You did not choose to be a female. You did not choose to be a European. So in that way, there's a way we can connect. But because of what has been indoctrinated in us, we're made to think in a certain way. When I see a black person, monkeys, Africa, not good, slave. You see, if a white kid who has been, or a European kid who has been going to school in Europe, sees a black person for the first time, what image comes first, subconsciously? It's slavery, colonization. You see, that's the first thing that comes in mind. What about for us, for that kid who has been in Africa? What does he see when he sees the white person or the European person? He sees slave master, colonizer. You see, that's a bad subconscious thing, because we're just human beings at the end of the day. We're just souls. It's just how we've been taught.
That is, I was looking at a TED Talk the other day about bias, and the speaker was saying, well, you know, biases are stories we make up about other people before we know who they are.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a good.
So it's interesting. I think it's a good point to talk about what are the inherent, implicit biases that we carry, just because of, as you said, our conditioning.
Yeah.
What has been, what we have, what kind of knowledge and stories we have inherited. And that brings us back to why it's valuable to have something like Black History Month that refocuses our attention on different themes, that takes us out of the our conditioning and exposes us, at least for a month, to a different perspective of a topic that we thought we knew something about or that we knew nothing about, basically. So I have a question a little bit about the collection and about some of the images. I wanted to know if you could, what you could tell us, or what do you know about how African history or Africans or Black history or Norwegian African history and presence is represented in the collection. And I know we have some slides here. Do they relate, should I start at the beginning of this? What can you tell us about the National Museum's collection and representations of Africa and the African diaspora is the word I use. I know that the word black history is very controversial, by the way. Or not controversial. There is no consensus on how to describe this historical focus that Ida and her group is trying to focus on. We've had discussions about this before.
It's hard.
You know, Black history is a term that comes from the United States because Black History Month has its origins there, based on the context of African Americans who didn't have a history to look back to, and who needed to. It was kind of like trying to bring awareness to African Americans. Be proud. No, you don't have a history. Yes, you've been slaves for 400 years. Okay, now we're emancipated. No, we don't have the right to vote. We're not full citizens. However, we still can have pride. We still have a lot of forbilder. What's that called in English? Thank you. We still have a lot of role models. We still have a strength as human beings that we can transcend this situation and be and contribute to society and humanity. So that's how Black History. That was what Black History, Negro History Week, which became Black History Month. 1926 Negro History Week, 1971 it became into Black History Month. So that's why it started that way, and that's why it's called Black History, because of the way race became invented to make sure that the hierarchy that allowed for slavery to exist could continue to exist, and it's called Black. Of course, Africa is not a continent of Black people. Africa is a continent of Africans, and the different groups and nationalities. So it's correct that saying Black doesn't apply to everybody. Everybody doesn't identify that way.
In addition to what you're saying, I came to Norway almost 5-6 years ago.
Okay.
And I came as an African, you know?
Exactly.
I was like, yes, I'm an African. I'm from Kenya, East Africa.
Yes.
And then I come here, I'm like, you're Black. I'm like, what?
Yes.
How can I be classified as a color? Because I just knew Black as a color.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. So that is so true, that the term Black history is considered a misnomer for very many people who have another historical roots which African Americans did not have. So it's very interesting. Ida.
And then you have the Caribbean and
And the
Latin
Caribbean
America, which have a
Latin
different
America.
story because a lot
Yes.
of Latins especially don't identify as Black nor African, even
Nope.
though they're dark skinned.
Unless they live in the United States, and now they have to sort of.
They had a lot
crazy.
of different stories.
Yes.
So we ended up with Black because of the international concept. And the whole idea is to create this together, everybody. We haven't made a mission statement. We haven't made a vision because we need to have these conversations. We haven't had them in our community as well as yet. We need to have more conversations and find Norwegian words and stuff for the Norwegian experience of being African and Black.
And the reason I have brought in the concept of the African diaspora in Norway is because, as you say, I'm here, you're here, you're here. We all have very different histories, right? My African-American roots are African-American, Native American, Haitian. So it's still a quite an interesting history. And now I'm here in Norway. So, okay, you're here. And I thought, well, how can we describe it? Well, it is an African diaspora in many respects, and it's here in Norway. That was another point from the Facebook event thread that that term was very unfamiliar for a lot of people, the African diaspora, which is, it's okay. That's what Black History Month is about, learning new terms and learning new concepts and encountering newness. So what can you tell us about the collection? or maybe would you like me to go through these slides?
I just want to say, like, also something when it comes to Africa. I think it also, like, you have this bias about Africa that's old, that you have this old separation between North and South. North of Sahara and South of Sahara. And also the way you've been depicting, because have you been depicting like the North of Sahara against the South, it's very different. And I think it's also when you look at, because it's also like different colonial histories, who colonized what countries, but I think also that people in general should be reminded that ancient Egypt is also Africa.
Yes.
And this is, because I think that's also something that's, like, you know, forgotten.
Yeah.
And whitewashed.
Yeah, totally whitewashed, very.
Yes.
And I think that has to, like, you know, be brought back into that like, you know, in common knowledge. The pyramids, right? Yeah, Tutankhamun and
Real quick.
Yeah.
There's this history teacher. He knows who he is.
Yeah.
He told me, I had a presentation about Africa, and he told me Egypt was not in Africa. So I was like, what?
Yes,
Oh,
this is
yeah.
also quite common. This is like this exception, but I think this is also when it comes to like repatriation. This is something that should be like, yes, this is African. Yeah,
Here, a
This is
history teacher
common.
here, a history teacher here in Norway.
In Norway, like we almost had beef.
Yeah,
Because, you know, he told me,
because he seemed like the exception.
yeah, he told me Egyptians were not Africans. They're not Africans.
I mean, I had a conversation like that with a professor of anthropology when I was in graduate school in anthropology at Harvard University. And I was in my first semester sitting there in class, and we were talking about difference and differentiation and how people differentiate between themselves, even within a country where you have different ethnic groups, that people can look at each other and know who is from their group and who is not. And I had this same conversation with a professor, and he was telling me, well, there's no bias amongst people. For example, Africans, there's not that much that people don't differentiate with such small nuances, and I'm saying, but of course they do. Of course they do. Why wouldn't they do that? It's not just a distinction between European and non-European. Within a country or a region, people can distinguish, not only language-wise, but on features. And it's and I was kind of thinking, I think I know, and I trust myself on this. I'm pretty sure that my knowledge of this is correct. Because if that's how it is in the South, if you can look in the South of the United States, you can, there are distinctions, and there's the kind of familiarity where you identify local traits, and there are different distinctions that you make, and often we could look and know who has African roots and who doesn't have African roots, whereas someone not within the group may not distinguish between a person who is fair-skinned and might not even think that the person is African-American.
Yeah.
Whereas in a family, you could look at a person who maybe have very fair skin and still know that person has African heritage. So these kind of nuances and distinctions, I think it's very similar, where you get these discussions of
and that's a part of the problem when you don't have a diverse Black and African display of culture books and whatever, that the bias becomes a stereotype.
Yes, the variation becomes invisible.
Invisible.
Yeah.
And that's basically what we're both saying in different senses and point of views, that we are tired of not having nuances in general. And the only way to get nuances is actually by including people of different nuances.
Yeah, and showing the richness.
Yeah. Because if you are on the outside, you cannot look inside and see the nuances in the same way. I don't believe it's possible if you don't have representation.
Very interesting.
There's one thing I noted. Could you go through the slides real quick?
I could, yeah.
Atlanta. No.
You want me to move ahead? Would you like to? You mean the previous slide that I had up?
Nah, I just wanna. Could you? How many are there? One.
There's this one. Would you like to say something about this, Dina, before I move past this?
No, we can come back to it. I just wanna quickly look at them.
Sure. Okay.
Wait.
And that's it. There are just a couple.
Okay.
Was there a piece in particular that you were thinking about?
No, I was just looking at the people who made them and where they from.
Yes.
Because in Astrup Museum, I saw the artists who had made the arts were from Africa. These ones are, I don't know, nobody from Africa there.
Yeah, there are. But I think it's also a big now.
This woman is South African.
Yes,
but wait,
and also George Adiagbo from Benin.
Yeah, and the next one.
And Gavin Janchis is from South Africa.
Okay.
Sanel Lemihol is from South Africa. And also they live there, which is also. But I think also it's when it comes to. There's also a difference between looking at an exhibition and owning the works and buying the works, because I think the After Family was like, it was a good show, but the works, I don't know if maybe they bought some works, but it probably on loan. So maybe, I don't know if they have what they have in their collection, but I think it's a big difference between, of course, if you are if you have artists with African that are African, or if you're depicting Africans. They're like two, who's defining who, and
the
who's
gaze.
allowed to speak, the gaze, everything. This is, of course, super important. And we can be much better we can improve in collecting like a wider scope of art by African artists. Of course.
If that's something that you think that's necessary, is that something that is on the agenda of being considered in increasing the number?
But to be more diverse in general and to reflect the society that we live in and the world that we live in. I mean, of course. And this to identify, and I totally understand this, like this. Now also when we're talking about like traumas, like art in general is maybe a trauma magnet. There's more like, politicized, sad art. than maybe happy art in general. But then when it comes to these works, I think this is also like the dealing with difficult topics. It's trauma. It's the way you've been looked at. And I can also see that we need also other stories that tell,
But Stina, is it that is the museum drawn to collecting that kind of art? Because there is other kind of art out there. So maybe it's also about what proclivities or what the institution is drawn to. Because I'm sure that there's art there, that there are artists who are making the kind of art that that would appeal to Victor. Let's just use Victor as an example of his taste or his historical.
And I'm sure he would love some
curiosity.
of the art we bought. That's maybe not by African artists as well, but it's of course it's and of course we at the museum always have to challenge ourselves, and we have to be aware and see what's going on, and be open to new styles and what's going on. It's very important.
Sure, Victor.
To be on the museum side, nowadays it's all about money. To be honest, it's all about money. And I feel like, for example, let's say you want to catch a fish. You don't go and get a plane. You go and get a fishing rod. And then you get a bait. You work on getting the fish. Nowadays, everything is about money. If you want to have more representation and more Africans or Black or people of different cultures visiting, you got to put in the work, really see what do people really like. Because you are going to get a revenue. This is to the museum. The museum is getting revenue from this. This is our sweat. You have to put in the work as well. Show the good sides, show the bad sides, show the ugly in both sides.
Yeah.
Because now money, when you get money, you don't care who it came from.
We actually do.
But you know what I'm saying. You know what I mean, though.
Yeah.
In that sense, history has to be, like you were saying, it's always changing. So let it change both ways.
And I think also when it comes to, I think also the museum is of course also part of the bigger art scene. And it's a collective responsibility also for when it comes to the art academy, to the galleries, everything like the education system, to get a more diverse field of what's shown. This multitude of styles and everything, because it's quite, to be honest, it's quite consensus based. So it has to be there are many different steps, I think. And I think also when it comes to, I think it's interesting now because it's, there's this museum rules. I mean,
tell us about them. This is interesting. What are some of the museum rules?
A museum has this. They're this ground rule. I mean, you have to take care of the collection. You have to preserve it.
Preservation, yes.
You're not allowed to not to sell anything. And now, when you look in they have this after the financial crisis. In America or in the US, and after
you mean
Corona,
2007, 2008?
Yeah,
that crisis.
Yeah.
Okay.
When you look at what happened in Detroit, the museum in Detroit actually was allowed to sell some central pieces in order to survive. And then when they purchased a new collection that they think get new works that would better mirror the people actually lived in Detroit.
Yes.
The Black community, so they will feel more that could more easily identify. And now this is happening, and then there's this other, I think it's a museum in Canada now, the director was saying, but we're not a suburb to Paris, so we should sell off our French collection to get others. And I think it's also, and I can say it's interesting, but then I also read I mean, you can say it's interesting with these relaxed rules. Maybe if you sell like 1 or 2 pieces, but then I read about this museum in Israel that's now selling 250 pieces of Palestinian historic art.
Oh, okay.
But then it's also
That's different.
and this is also how you can like that collection is so important to preserve.
Yeah.
So you have like this history that you're talking about, because I think it's so important that we collect more and we keep it, so you get more and more fragments. So you have more pieces to create this new narrative, this more updated history.
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
Because I remember when I grew up in Grönlandtøyen, I read stories about how terrible we were, how poor we were, how stereotyped we were. So when I read back on how we were represented, it's still the same problem. And it's 20 years since I lived there and since I grew up there. And I am thinking about how will my story be told in 200 years? That does not represent my story. It does in some sense, because I do have a slave history as well as a Norwegian history, but I don't want that to be my history. I don't want to. We have so much more than slavery in the Caribbean, and I also want it to reflect my Norwegianness of the history, the mixes, the fragments, without a white gaze. On own terms. I believe that's important. And it's with LGBTQ+. I mean, it was seen as a mental illness and up until 1976 or something. 72. And we have a lot of work to do when it comes to racism. Like, that's the story. We need to move ahead from that.
So question about that. Do you think that some of this work is attempting to do that, though? My impression is that some of this work is precisely attempting to address that history, or putting, questioning that and reinterpreting some of those aspects.
To me, the Frida's art piece is actually it hit me, and I feel personally connected to them, because I feel like I can never be myself. I can seldomly truly be 100% honest. Like lately I've been thinking, okay, how honest can I be in this context? How honest can I be in white institutions? I don't know, because I have so much unresolved history when it comes to being a mixed race and growing up in a white society and white spaces. And I feel a lot of times like that woman. And like she talked about giving birth to a new start of herself. So I resonate personally a lot with a lot of these pieces, but I don't want that to be my history. I want to move forward. I don't want to be in this 400-årsnatta, which is a Norwegian, and Norway was also colonized by the Danish for 400 years. And when they started to rebuild their nation, a Norwegian nation, they were like, okay, let's forget the 400-year night. That's what they called it. And then let's rebuild our history. Let's actually collect fragments and rearrange the fragments and tell a new story about Norway. And now we're one of the richest and top nations in the world. So I want that to shift the focus. Yes, I've felt like this, but my son doesn't need to feel like this.
I see.
Yeah, I can totally see your point.
Yeah.
That's interesting, because I've noticed in having conversations with my son, who's he's not a kid at all. He's 21 years old, but I remember.
This is your kid.
I didn't want to bring it up, but my son just turned 21, a week ago, and but I remember.
He's a Libra? October.
The 24th, on the 24th.
Wow, mine was on the 9th.
Oh yeah, okay. I think he may be a Scorpio, actually.
Oh.
I think he may be a Scorpio.
20.
Yes,
Yeah, on the 24th, right? Yeah, we agree. Consensus, he's a Scorpio.
Okay.
Miles, you're a Scorpio, wherever you are. But I see also, because as I've tried to, when I remember trying to be selective but also feeling this sense of responsibility of what aspects of, how to give him a sense of history, which was already complicated, since he's Norwegian, African-American. So what kind of historical anchor do I want to pass on to him? Is it you're a descendant of slaves and we have transcended, we have overcome, now you live in Norway. What did I want to be his reference points? And then I tried to also take cues from him, and his circle of friends, the quite, broad, very mixed group of friends. What do they talk about? They seem to, without interference from the grown-ups, resolve a lot of their issues around belonging and identity. Up until a certain age, they had it all figured out and they were doing better than we were. The kids were. And then they learn bias, they learn, fake history or wrong history or slanted history or no history. And then, so I think it's interesting that you both have said you're very aware about what you want to have as heritage and what you want to pass on as heritage. And I think that's a very interesting piece of information, for you, but also for me as an anthropologist who is trying to engage more with the Norwegian context. My research is originally done in Cuba, but on similar issues of heritage production and history understanding. But trying to understand and observe the Norwegian context and these conversations that are going on are trying to see what is it that people want to adopt as their heritage. And maybe that's what we need to try to learn is learn not what do we think your heritage is and what do we think is important to you, but take our cues from what you think are important. And that gives us the possibility to break up in this taste, these learned ideas of yes, these learned.
I think you need to collaborate, and also if you go.
Which one? Yeah.
So if you go to this Tiedemann painting,
yes,
of course this is the a portrait by Adolf Tiedemann from 1841. And of course, this is we have many depictions of Africans in our collection. Because after the Suez Channel opened in Egypt in 1850s, there was also this travel agency with the Cook Travel Agency, and people started traveling. Ibsen was there at the opening. Ole Buld played at the pyramids. So it's action in Egypt. And also they traveled. There were stipends to North Africa, so artists went.
Okay, we need to have a meeting.
Yeah,
I need to collect those fragments.
but it was you traveled, you to North Africa and you painted, and of course some were more realistic than others. Some were this romantic. Of course, you can focus your gaze on what you want and what you want to tell the people back home. And then there are other artists not so many travel to the south of Sahara, but then you have Ridley Borchgrevink, who went to Uganda, and he made these fantastic drawings of these chiefs, and also what's special about him is that he actually gave them names, because usually when you portrait Africans, they're always anonymous or they don't have a name. And also something that we done as a research in the museum is taking away in the titles where we have usually had anonymous. We have now changed it to unidentified, which is a big difference, because we have now, of course, we can go into when we have the time and the resources. We can try to find we have been trying to find who is this boy or young man that was portrayed. Maybe we can find his name somewhere. Who was he? And this is I think very important. And it could be I think
anonymous means we don't know who you are.
Yeah.
Unidentified means we haven't taken the time to look for your name yet. So that is quite a distinction.
It's such a big difference, and also Tiedemann. Now we have curators who've been doing research, trying to find out who he was. We still don't know.
But you know where? You know where? I heard that maybe you know where.
I think
the
maybe it
painting
was like when he was traveling from Rome to Düsseldorf, maybe somewhere. We're not sure, but maybe you can find out. And also the whole research in finding out who he was also goes into like the research of African American or African artists in Europe at this time, which is something we haven't like done research in, but doing this we found out so much. And also like in America, I mean, to be like a real artist, you had to go to Europe, you had to do a grand tour. And also like later when Africans in the US were not allowed to study at the academies, you can go to Europe because it was allowed. So then you actually have
very interesting.
Yeah, and then you had Africans in Europe, like
this was a place to come to study at the
and then you had like this super famous, well, not super famous. It's not like he's famous enough. Robert Duncanson, who. He was like working with he was like working with Tennyson at the time, and did these fantastic paintings in the States. He made this fantastic painting called Land of the Lotus Eaters. He went to
he was African American?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he went to Europe, and for some reason he went to someone in the National Gallery bought this painting, and it was early. And now this is like a true detective story that you have to hear the ending.
So this is an
later.
article that I've seen a draft of that one of your colleagues has written, and this will be posted on the website when it's probably.
I think it is maybe.
Very
in a short
recently
version, and then she's working on a longer version. But I think all like this. I think it is a new knowledge of African presence in Europe at this time, and also like this at the Vatican there was like this Eritrean community because all like
Well,
yeah.
Before we wrap up, because we're about to wrap up, I want to give you each a moment, for some final reflections. But I hope that after Black History Month, you've collaborated with the National Library, you've collaborated with Dijkman, and you've had this conversation here, and it's not just today, but there's been several conversations represented here on our stage. We have several conversations, and then this work that your colleague is doing, looking into this. Yeah. I hope, I have a dream that the institutions you've collaborated with, that we can pull together some of the stories that have come out of the collaboration and package something that shows what a great conversation Black History Month has inspired, and I think that institutions who have wanted to be a part of the conversation and who have produced something as a result of the conversation, it would be great to see those pieces together in one format. So as something that we can take with us as an example of how dialogue and friction can be productive. So can I just ask you guys to give us some final reflections? Start with Ida, and then Victor, and then we'll end with Stina.
For me, it's beautiful to hear you talk about African artists back in 1841 in Europe. That is, my incentive to start this was that I never found myself or my story in Norway. So I've always searched for my stories. And this is a story for me. So I hope that you could help us, like you said, write down these fragments so we can show how rich our story is, or African and Afro descent stories in Norway. That Norway is not just one thing, and the Black community and the African community is not just one thing. Like you said, we're all humans, and we just need to add fragments to showcase that we have different perspectives. And I love these conversations, so thank you.
Victor?
Well, for me, I believe every nation has been able to contribute to civilization for a good part. And I feel like, everybody should be represented as they've done, you know, not just put some other people down, because we as a people already, as human beings, have suffered enough trauma. It's about time we heal and, you know, heal the world, heal the earth, you know, change the narrative, subconsciously control what's being put in and out. Then I think we can, you know, Mother Nature is going to be happy with us.
I agree. I like that sentiment, definitely. I am on Team Victor when it comes to changing the narrative and changing our impact on the planet, so Mother Nature can be happy with us at the end of the day. We want that.
That would be nice.
Stina?
I agree. One love. And I also think that it's been very nice to have this conversation. It's been very fruitful. I'm certain that it's not the end. It's just many new beginnings. I also think that I would love to talk to you more and hear about the fragments that we found at the National Library. Maybe it's also something we can patch together.
This is this would be a really good conversation. I was going to mention for you, we have an archive in the private archive section, in the section for private archive and rare books. We have an archive of a Norwegian painter who traveled in Africa, who was in certain areas of Africa, and she painted.
No.
I don't want to misstate who it is, but it may be, and this is something we received just a couple of years ago. So this is a bigger conversation. I would like to see more institutions who have relevant material, because I think it would be great to kind of like see where all this material is in the country.
Yeah,
I think it would be a really fascinating project.
Interesting project.
I have ideas in the head.
I love ideas.
So let's keep this conversation going. Thank you to the National Museum for having me and for having our guests. Thanks for a lovely evening. And
thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Signing off.